Hello, Amanda.
Hey,
How we doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Ready to do our first chapter?
Oh, yes, I'm ready.
All right, let's get to it and
Okay.
see how we do. When we left off, we were talking about part one, war games. December 7th, 1941. Chapter 1. Here's Tommy. It was a late afternoon, Monday, December 8th, 1941, in Mount Airy, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm telling this very personal tale exactly as I remember it. War games. The two little brothers, Tommy 5 and Jimmy 4, were sitting on the floor in front of the radio by the grandfather's clock in the living room. We were listening to the Lone Ranger. It was late afternoon. It was our daily ritual. It was 207 West Mount Pleasant Avenue, a three-story home on a tree-lined cobblestone street with a front lawn and a front wall that included a climbing tree. There was always heavy traffic up and down the street, and we had orders from Grandma, don't cross the street without looking. Dinner was near, it was almost ready, so we couldn't play outside. When we couldn't play outside, we would listen to the radio and sit in front of the large picture window and play Cars. In the game Cars, you pick the direction up or down, that's yours for the day, and all the cars going your way were yours to keep for the day, and sometimes a real classy one passed by, unbelievably beautiful, but most times they were real old junkers and nunganungs, as we called the old black Fords. Anyway, it was hilarious when a nunganung nunged by, with your other guy rolling and howling with laughter at your junker. It was a great pastime for our 4- and 5-year-old brotherly minds. Some days our luck ran down and a fight would start and we'd switch sides in the middle of the game. Jimmy always punched first, and I always hit back. I was older and stronger. That's how wars start. If you don't like what's coming up, and you don't like what's going down, and you want to switch sides in the middle of the game, the aggressor always strikes first. We love to hit back, as we are American warriors. We settle our difference fast and furious. We had just finished a really good fight, and the 1812 overture was blasting out on the radio. Hi-yo, Silver! Away! Let the war begin. Mount Airy, Philadelphia was primarily white, Catholic, working-class neighborhood. A few Italians lived there, but not very many. Most Italians lived up on the same street up near Chestnut Hill. Tommy and Jimmy never heard the word German or Jap before. The door burst open. This wasn't unusual. Uncle Ray, the neighborhood's high school paper boy, always burst through the door every single day of every week after serving a wagon load of the Philadelphia Bulletin to the Mount Airy families. This particular day, he was flushed with excitement and enthusiasm as he yelled, waving a newspaper in his hand, "Get your Tommy guns out, boys. We're going to fight the Japs." To an average first grader like Tommy, these were brand new words, but ones never forgotten during a lifetime of warrior consciousness. War with Japs was the bulletin headline. Other than that, Uncle Ray's babbling made no sense whatsoever to two young brothers. We just wanted to hear the rest of the exciting afternoon radio program, and The Shadow was on next. Grandmom had 11 kids of her own spread over a long period of time. There was no grandpa. We never heard much about him, and all her kids were known as Uncle and Aunt, except one. That was Ann. She was known as Mommy. Ann was married to Pat Little, our daddy, who was living out there somewhere. That's why we live at Grandma's. We haven't seen Pop in several years. All the aunts and uncles are careful never to speak about Pop. Apparently, there was very bad blood, and everyone's embarrassed for Mommy on the Pop subject, because she keeps company with a nice man who owns a yellow convertible. Uncle Charlie also lives with Grandma. So does Uncle George, Uncle Bill, Uncle John, and finally the last, but certainly not least, of the clan, known as the Dewey family, the Roman Catholic high school paperboy, Uncle Ray, our buddy. Jimmy and I listened to the radio in the living room every night before supper without fail. It was our only connection with the outside world except for the Saturday matinee at the Sedgwick movie. Nowadays, our stories were always being interrupted by news. Whenever news came on, Jimmy and I played under the house or played under the dining room table during the, it was decorated with lace that hung down to the floor on all sides. We could get away with anything around adults if we were quiet. But this night was the beginning of a very big change. Things were never going to be the same again. Soon everyone living there was going away, and there would be no one to play with except Jimmy, and he refused to be the Jap in the war games. My real connection with war was the Saturday matinee. We stood in line, paid 11 cents, and got a box of Juji fruits or Good and Plenty's. The other stuff never lasted long, and no chewing gum was allowed. We yelled and screamed for the good guys, and booed and hissed at the bad guys, cheering wildly when the white hats and the cavalry charged with the bugle blowing. Even these emotional highs became slim pickings during the beginning of the war. Soon all the cowboy movies were war movies that dwelled on how cunning and sneaky the Japs were. Japs were midget supermen that could throw innocent babies into the air and catch them on the points of their bayonets. In most movies, Germans were pictured as intelligent, but who acted as the meanest people in the entire universe. They tortured and they beat people and they killed without mercy. Movie Italians were the weak ones with the dark mustaches who always surrendered in the end. But it was Tojo, Hitler, and Mussolini that took a real beating every week from the movie cartoons and the newsreels. Depending on whom you asked, Grandma, Mommy, the uncles, the kids at school, or the kids in the neighborhood, you get many different views about me. Wimp or Cryberry would sum it up very nicely. We received funny-looking letters from Pop regularly with a return address. Patrick Francis Little Jr., United States Navy, pharmacist mate first class, FPO Atlanta. Wouldn't you know their Pop would become a swabby, snidely sneered Uncle Bill, who was now a newly minted United States Marine from a faraway, scary place called Parris Island, South Carolina. The letters from Pop were read out loud by Grandma, sometimes reluctantly by hand, but mostly by Grandma, and always when none of the brothers or uncles, as we called them, were around. The letters were really weird. They had little holes in them and blank spaces with no words. Grandma would guess what went in them. She guessed it was in some place called England. No one ever really certain where Pat was and did not seem to care. Jimmy and I sure didn't. Otherwise, the old Mount Airy house got quieter and quieter as more and more uncles went away. Truthfully, I never felt Jimmy's presence. We were never really bonded as brothers. It was more like we bonded as adversaries. We were always competing for the same grown-up attention, and he was always pissed off at me for not wanting to play with him. Mount Airy is known as Philly by Catholics at Holy Cross Parish. Philadelphia isn't separated into sections, it is separated into parishes. Even the Protestants mention the Catholic parish they live in when they're giving a city location. I never heard much about Protestants, except that they all went to public school. We Irish Catholic kids called all the public school kids Prots. Everyone in our Irish clan was a Dewey. No matter what your last name was, we were all Deweys. And every grandchild was a Dewey. So we felt related to each other and were a real family. I believe that is why I never felt alone, even to this very day. I always belonged to the Dewey family. War games went on. Tommy's war went on reel after reel, as our entire consciousness in the first grade at Holy Cross Parish School was developed at the Saturday matinee, and we acted out in the summers and weekends on the playgrounds, the parks, the creeks, the lakes around Philadelphia. We were always invading islands and fighting Japs and holding out with only a few bare-fisted fighters and no ammunition. Early in the war, Uncle Bill joined the U.S. Marines. So did Uncle John, followed by Uncle Ray, the neighborhood paper boy. We considered ourselves a United States Marine family. No one ever mentioned my pop or the U.S. Navy, so I didn't either. Life was happy. Uncle Bill was the first Marine in the family to come home from Parris Island, the United States Marine Corps boot camp. He was all decked out in his green uniform and brown leather belt. I couldn't breathe when I saw him. I couldn't speak. I was in total awe. He was in all the movies I ever saw. A real, hard-nosed, salty-ass United States Marine. Soon he became only a name and an occasional letter around the house after he shipped off for Guadalcanal with the 1st United States Marine Division. They became America's first boots to hit the beach in the South Pacific during the Second World War. I was so proud of Uncle Bill. Next time I saw him was 44 months later, when he came home with a sea bag full of smelly souvenirs that wore the Pacific. And I think that'd be about enough for today.
All right. All right, let's close out for here.
How we do?